There have been some people that have been a little too bearish. I scream and rage on Twitter at the World Economic Forum and a lot of other people. That just actually empowers them. We're talking about them, we keep them in the news, and you've got to stop participating in their system.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Black Swan Capitalist YouTube channel, where we bring you the most up-to-date information and unique perspectives on trends in finance, digital assets, economics, and geopolitics. Today, we're thrilled to have Francis Hunt back on the show. As you may know, Francis Hunt is the originator behind the Hunt volatility model, which offers traders a unique and technical approach to pattern trading in all markets. Francis, our listeners ask for you quite frequently in the comments because of the wealth of wisdom and experience that you offer. So thank you so much for making this possible, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very much for inviting me again. We enjoyed it immensely last time and glad to be back.
Well, thank you. And that means a lot coming from you. So we have a lot to talk about, as we were discussing here, but I think we should start with your take on just global markets in general, specifically the dollar, since it's still the reserve currency and it's tied to the global economy. And there are escalating tensions around the world as the trend of nations start to dump the US bonds, and that's accelerating. So one might suggest even that the United States is propping up their own currency to buy time. So what are your thoughts on that?
Wow. I mean, we just did an update inside our own community, and the inflation trade is 100% on and live and very, very well, and in rude yellow health, I would say. Sorry, we're getting alerts pinging a lot at the moment. XRP is getting slammed around. Gold, new highs. New highs on all currencies, by the way. We traded some of that with real beautiful HVFs. We shared it on Twitter. We're net investment long. We never sell that investment gold because of the fundamental narrative. We continue to trade within that and turn profits back into gold and some others, including the digital crypto space that we'll talk about in due course. But this is the gold story at the moment, and it's worthwhile taking a moment and even just letting everyone check in with that, because gold is absolutely doing a ripper. I'm going to actually just go get a chart up and pull it up and let everyone else do it. And I say to everybody that's just a crypto king, remember, gold is king of the anti-fiats, and you want gold to be doing well. It's not an adversary. There's kind of been this narrative, sort of some Bitcoin maxis versus Peter Schiff, and they've kind of gone on this, they've created this backwards and forwards. One of them has to be a winner and one of them has to be a loser. And as I've said to you before, I'm a massive fan of a stable of horses rather than just the fastest horse. And if I go to the share and just remind everybody, the God market of precious metals is at all-time highs at the moment. So let it share the right screen, hopefully. There we go. This is gold right now at the moment. This is weekly. And by the way, I'll take this out on monthly, and there's a couple of interesting things to say on this. And then for that one, I might even go to the futures because we get a bit more history. And again, I'll just take all my annotations off for a second so everyone can focus it. A comment I've been making is that the pullbacks in between the big moves are getting shorter. There's a quickening going on. This was your 80s gold bull market. Many of your viewers may not have even been anywhere near being around at that point. I'll give my age away by saying that I was, but I wore a lot younger man's clothes. But that's a bull. This was a bit of a truncated, believe it or not, bull, in my opinion. And this is the early doors, in our views, of next bulls. This is it. And these are your pullbacks in the meantime. You can see you went from the 80s, and not until post.com did you return up on precious metals. The realm of financialization of everything saw no need to own this. Divestment, divestment, divestment. You're a dinosaur if you own gold, all the way into the tech boom. Then we had a bit of divestment after the 2011 into 2017, which was part and parcel. You had, this was worthy point. Let me just make separately as a quick sidebar. That was your subprime event in 2008 and your sub $1,000 mark. that gave you a beautiful ascending triangle, which you eventually broke through. So that was subprime as a crisis, pretty small. This, by the way, we're on a monthly chart. That single candle that had a big wick, both to the upside and downside, was your CV19. So the crises have got bigger. CV19 was an unbelievable crisis. One should argue that it's almost bigger than the subprime crisis, given what was done. And you can see the effect on gold on the monthly time frame is actually not very much. Yes, if you're trading on the hourly or the 15-minute, you would have had a nasty candle in there. A couple of them, but generally this is heading on up. So we're in the peak robbery. So the thing to remember is they charge you income tax, then they charge you VAT for buying things or general sales taxes. Then they charge you tax for a car, tax for this, tax when you import an item, a custom duty, a VAT on the custom duty, tax upon tax. Then on untaxed income, when you die, they charge a tax, a death tax and inheritance tax. And then they've blown all that money with living on the hog, that they even need a real super tax. And that tricky tax is by devaluing your currency and creating inflation. Inflation is policy by central banks. That's why you will often hear, oh, a little bit of inflation is good. You don't ever want this deflation. Well, why wouldn't we want deflation? You mean my money buying me more stuff each year? Why is that bad? And my salary staying the same and I get net wealthier because I keep spending less of my salary. And the one point Jeff Booth makes very well is that technology, and we're in a parabola of technology and change with AI and everything now coming on, that's going to surpass the internet, all of this, is that it's disinflationary. So not only have they stolen all the benefits of something that is disinflationary, because people are competing in a free market, they compete, they'll do something with technology better, quicker and faster at the same value to you, that they'll be able to charge a lower price and people can continue to go down. And they've killed the bonus that is disinflation that you should be getting for your money. And they've gone exactly the other way and are now taxing you with inflation, which is through proliferation. So they've proliferated so much that they've not only killed the disinflation benefits, but they've added putting you as a monkey on a greased pole, that the minute you stop, you're skidding down. Those are all the things they've stolen from you. And then on top of that, all that money they've stolen, that they've done all of this, they still don't live within their own existence, and they've created an absolute smorgasbord wall of debt that can never be paid. So you live with a parasitic tick on your throat, only instead of being a tiny tick, it's big like this, and you're walking around like this, carrying this thing around, sucking your blood. And the truth of that scenario is you need to get out of the system where you're paying all these extreme taxes. That usually means needing to leave your country. And this chart, coming back to the gold, is the chart of inflation, because the net trajectory of this, and we'd call this a rising wedge, and we often draw splitters, but the net trajectory of this is that. And the difference is you don't go like that. What happens is you go like this. Then you go parabola. That is what's a compounding upon a compounding effect. So whilst that looks linear for you for now, in actual fact, it's going to bend its way up. Gold is going to move an extended amount to the upside to an extreme degree. And it's not surprising that we are talking on this day, and it's a week that we've made a new high. We are sitting in a month on the dollar that you are in a new high. And it wasn't that long ago everybody was saying, yeah, but you said once, twice, three times a lady. Yes, it worked. Once, twice, three times a lady. You broke the fourth time, small little return move, and you are now running. That level of 2K is done. And we had the same sort of tipsy-topsy at the 1K, and we've called for 2,900. So this is good news, actually, for crypto land, because it is the canary that is pointing out proliferation and inflation. That's generally not good news, but for the asset price movements, the things that move faster will preserve your value and potentially even take you a little bit ahead. Your income, your salary, a couple of properties that are paying you rentals, they can't move fast enough for what is turning into a parabola. So you need to get into the inflation hedges. And as we were talking just before, I showed you a couple of miners that are now turning, and soon the time will come that silver which is going to be a more violent, it's slower. So I talk about the 4x4 pulling gold up. It's the engine. And instead of having a tow rope, you have this big fat bungee cord, and you've got a trailer full of silver at the bottom. The minute you start going up the hill, the trailer actually doesn't move. The car is moving. That's gold. It's the one with the engine. It's the God market. Nothing moves till it moves. Once it starts moving, it starts pulling the tow bungee cord starts extending. And what's happened, because there's a lot of silver, because you've been stacking 1,000-ounce bars that weigh 33 kilos in your trailer, and you're now heading for the hills, the tension gets taken up in the bungee cord. But then after a period, eventually it's stretched as far as it can, and that trailer starts to move. And then when it moves, it starts to get the energy trapped in the bungee, also pulling it as the 4x4 continues up the hill. And that's when the slack starts to come in on the rope, and it starts to play catch up. So we are, and currently people should be in gold, but the rotation moment will be the beginning of the next stage. And that will start to see silver participating a little bit more and starting to get into the game of the new highs. Maybe I should, just before I hand back to you, point out that silver is still well off new highs, and I'm not saying now. So the game for you is gold bias, anti-inflation biased. King of the anti-inflations is moving. Stay with him, trade him to the long side. If you understand HVF method, it'll give you targets and stops. That's what we do. Follow us on the YouTube channel, etc. for more. But it is great news for people who positioned for the collapse of the buying power of money, because there's going to be a polarizing event, those that didn't and those that did. And that's where we're at right now, as a sort of state of the nation speech, if you will. I hope that helps.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you've been spot on. And this is what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. You have to get outside the system, position yourself well, because the research indicates that the US is actually employing a strategy to stabilize its own currency by purchasing its own debt. But what they are doing, and they're not telling you, is accumulating gold reserves. They're embracing digital assets, and they are shifting the burden onto consumers with the inflationary pressures, essentially.
100%, and you're going to be the last to know. They need to shuffle. They're leaving the empty shell behind. They're taking all their kit and the family pictures off the wall and the silver and the cutlery, and they're packing their 4x4. They're moving to the new home. And not until they've got lock, stock, and all keyed up are they going to tell you, and then hit the plunger for the collapse on the legacy building. And we're the last to know, and we're still staying in one of the rooms, and they're going to blow us up with it. And I'm not for these controlled demolitions generally. And it's quite clear that we're very much there.
So let's move on to digital assets. I know there's a Bitcoin halving approaching. How do you anticipate the impact of the overall crypto market? Do you believe that this Bitcoin halving is going to lead a surge in prices across the board? And if I may ask, do you foresee any other utility tokens, for instance, like XRP and XLM, eventually decoupling from Bitcoin as they address their own real world use case?
Yeah, so another good question, Bitcoin. So there have been some people that have been a little too bearish. And again, it is let's get back to the charts. In fact, it's been the God market for crypto. But it's thankfully gold has done its bit, and Bitcoin can now do its. This was a reversal down here. This was the bottom, the inverted head and shoulder there. And it was beautifully called by the the two head and shoulders we had here, which called that down leg. That was the first warning we weren't having a normal bull. I don't feel we got the full bull in much the same way as the previous gold to the 2011 high. Didn't quite have the full run that it was supposed to have. We didn't get the collapse that was supposed to happen after subprime for gold, and the blow off here was truncated. We went from 10K, which was kind of the real beginning of the move. This was a collapse brought on by the events, and then a return there too. So the bull market really sort of started 8, 9, 10K and ran 64, and this was a marginally higher high after that falling wedge. And that gave us an inverted that brought us all the way back down, target at the 15, 16. So it was a truncated. If you think about 10K to around 70, it was a 7x bull move. And if you think of it relative to the previous high, which was 20K, it's only really three and a bit, maybe 3.5. And I feel that, and then we had a lot go wrong. It was a horrible bear markets in terms of news flow. It seemed like never ending fun. Just the FTX was probably the jewel in the crown. But there was plenty others. We don't need to revisit that. But so in this sense, we're in a new bull, and the ETF, this was the ETF kickoff point for me, the 25. That is the 10K of last bull markets. If you say, well, we went from 10 to 70, you've got a 7X in a truncated bull, in my view. You conservatively could do some Chinese mathematics on 7 by 25, 4's 100, and 3 more is 175. We have an inverted head and shoulder that's already given us a 145 target. So if I just pull that a bit down, and I'm just sketching for you here, I'm not going to do too much detail, but that is like that and like that. And amazingly, the 47.5 is the key level there, which was the neckline of that head and shoulders. So that ties in with our theory. That's your big head. And that goes to around 145, 150. So the 175, 145, 150 seems proportionate, if you have a proportionate by scale bull market, maybe to the previous one, which, as I say, probably a bit short in my take and quite a nasty bear. We'll see you at the 145 to 175 potential high. So I do think that we're going to see those highs coming. And I think it's going to be driven on currency collapse. But the dollar will still be probably amongst that one of the stronger currencies. But the overall category of fiat are in a state of collapse on the basis that nobody wants the debt. And as I mentioned to you, we've got a couple of inflation trades in oil and gas exploration. We mentioned in mining, mining stocks are going to start moving, which means this is going to be probably they're starting to believe in the gold prices. They've forward sold. They've got a lot of high costs because of inflation. That's why miners don't move in the beginning. We're getting into the phase where you're going to get more of a groundswell of movement. So miners moving, copper going to go up. We've seen cacao on the soft side, Robusta coffee. So this is inflation. Everybody will give you a story. Oh, there's a supply chain issue, or Africa didn't get enough cacao, and this and that. Some of that will be partially true. But the real thing the CNBC talking heads and the money matters of this world don't say is the absolute fiat destruction. You are in a fiat destruction realm, regardless which nation state you are in, and you want to get out of your fiat into inflation protected physical assets, ideally, but you may have to participate in the markets. Beware the great taking aspect. So counterparty risk is going to be huge. It's a minefield out there, Versan, but that's how the state of the nation is. And Bitcoin further up.
Right. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Bitcoin halving with its 4-year cycles, it seems interconnected with the events like debt restructuring, quantitative easing, and even the presidential cycles. So it's not a coincidence. I just find that very interesting.
No, you're 100% right. There's 3 4-year cycles. There's the quantitative easing to quantitative tightening cycle that always comes on these years. So it's 16, 12, 16, 2020, and now 2024. There's the election cycle you mentioned and the Bitcoin halving cycle. So, and the halving cycle and pumping Bitcoin up does to a degree rely on the proliferation of fiat. Don't forget, this charge all came out of the events that happened here. The solution came here after this crash down, and the fiat proliferation is what gave you the legs for that move. Now we're starting from a higher level, but to get into these new number levels, there could be, and that's why we've often spoken of a demand destroying event as well. People might find that in between all of this, you could get that wobble. Don't forget gold. I showed you when it had CV19 occurred in its bull market. It did dip and then it shook it off. But we've got to keep wary for that. That's a great way of shaking retail out that don't do money management, that don't understand leverage. And the game is to keep you in the game.
Agreed. For real world utility cryptos like XRP and XLM, I think there's going to be a point where they'll eventually decouple from Bitcoin, since they're tackling, again, real world problems in the banking sector and so forth. And naturally, as adoption grows, that growth is going to be based on use case and utility. So inevitably, in my opinion, the winners that do solidify their position later on down the road will become less reliant on Bitcoin's movements.
That's right. Look, I mean, it will come maybe like a point like we have in big tech, where, if Facebook goes down a real lot, it might lean on a little bit on some of the other social medias, but it's not going to cause Apple necessarily to crash. It's not going to stop my Nvidia from going up, for example. And they will still be part of a broader category, in my opinion: status, surveillance, finance, megacorps that are biggest clients are probably government, and the data they're selling that comes off the back of our use. But nonetheless, they are different entities, and they will have some correlations. But as you say, it won't be as tightly correlated and reliant. At the moment, the rest of crypto is a slave to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin drops 10, 15%, barring some very special developments, most tokens are taking a bath. That will, over time, as people understand and realize, change. Here's where we are on the big one. And I mean, we've spoken of this before and nothing has changed. For people that lack patience, particularly in crypto, people have no patience in crypto. They have very short investment histories, so they've probably waited already much longer than they want to wait. But this is a massive continuation pattern, and the fact you didn't fully participate here in the bull market like Bitcoin actually is giving you almost a technical advantage now, because when you break super big, and you have no previous watermarks to run. And more importantly, this is weekly, by the way, let's just explain that. By the way, very good structure. Previously, it was a thinner market and a younger token when that one happened. That was how you ran. A little bit of a wind up on the way as well. Now, I'm going to drop a time frame and I'm going to show you about this, because this is really important. And this is why we've got more interested and are watching more closely on XRP than any others. By the way, for investment, because XRP is taking its time, and I do think they're trying to flush people out. If they're going to do something with it, they don't want to make retail rich to a certain degree. But I don't want to sit in the investment period of the crypto market going sideways either. So I'm using investment in tokens that currently are showing me they're going to go up higher. But when I'm getting ready to leverage trade moderately XRP, the minute this event starts to come, and then I'll pivot some of it back into investment XRP. So if you just sat 100% in XRP, it's been a pretty crappy bull market so far. Unfortunately, it has to be said. Compared to, say, others like Solana or others that were done super big stuff, or even just Bitcoin itself. However, those that have been patient, there is something coming. And this is now on the daily time frame that just missed making a new high. And this is our potential structure. Again, it's a squeeze. It's a squeeze with 3 impulses, and we're on the 3rd at the moment. So we are here, 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 and here. And we could go a little bit lower one more time. But the next major move, I think, is going to be a break of that double blue line that I've just drawn to the upside. And that could see a lot of catch up, because the XRP dominance chart is abysmal. In fact, it's worth showing that and owning that, because when it changes, I think you're at almost secular level lows for XRP dominance. And I'm going to go literally for as much history as I can. I'll go fortnightly for that, so we get 2 weeks. This is a dire general performance, but it's at really, really interesting lows. So that's the halfway mark between the red line and the blue line. That's because I'm log scale, just to show everybody that. That's the halfway mark. You can see that XRP is kind of schizophrenic. It's either deeply, deeply underloved, and this was very early in its days, so I wouldn't hold that against it. But you had a period in 17, and that resulted in a mega spike where you went to, wait for it, 31% of total market cap. That was huge. Of course, Bitcoin was a lot less, and so was Ethereum during that time. And I'm not expecting that degree of move. But again, when you touch this level, you went right the way to the extremity on the other side with an overshoot again. That was 19%. I think, or 18, call me a liar for 18. You bounced on the middle once or twice, but since this SEC narrative has come out, you've almost become the bottom fisher, sitting there And when I drop from the fortnightly time frame, you will see that this is close to an all-time probable low. Only that and that once-off moment in 2017, and the result that occurred post-2017 was extreme. And even here, you got bumps off quite a fair bit. So there's a bump in dominance coming, unless the token is to disappear without any existence. And for that, we have a price that it has to run. And then we say, it's not good. So we always have a level that we accept where we're wrong. And I'll show you that when we go back to the price. But I'm thinking more likely that this is very close to a spike in some dominance again, and that will come with quite a sustained price move with a bit of catch up. Don't forget, only part of a bull market last year, not really fully participated in this one. There could be a lot of pressure, spring-loaded pressure to pop on the upside to start a re-rating process. And even if you just got to the middle, somewhere like 6.5% in a violent spike, that in price terms could be quite huge in terms of where you're at. Don't forget, at the moment, you're sitting at around 1.33% of total market cap. If that went to 6.5, that would be four and a half, maybe even 5 times the rest of the market cap's performance during that period. So assuming they all stood still, which I doubt, you would be going up 5 or 6 times in price. So that starts to get a bit interesting. So if we pivot back to the price, I'll show you where our hypothesis is wrong, because everybody says, well, nothing's happened. You spoke about this some time ago. Yes, it takes a while. I mean, we're on a monthly chart with the Korean won, which we're expecting to have a break on. And that's a setup we've been watching for a couple of years, and it still hasn't triggered officially yet. But this over here, if we were to run this would be a deep concern for me, that low 2. So remember what I drew for you, the 3 impulses, draw, that's method, HVF, big first one, and then a second. This had quite a clear base plate. You had a couple of dips, you went up and you dipped again down and then went up again. So you had a proper look at this. I would be deeply concerned. And what's the price at that level? I'll give it to you, the very low here. If you ran 28.7 cents, I'd be quite concerned about that. And I would start diminishing my optimism for that saga. Everything else is good. And actually, where we are here, I still think we can come down one more time. This is a bit of a shooting star. So again, I'll go back to, I'm going to leave it on this time frame, the fortnightly. So I don't think it's today or tomorrow, guys. I'm sorry, but I do think it's coming. If I go back to, leave it on the fortnightly, but just expand that and just switch off all the annotations. This is a bit of a shooting star here. You did a little bit too much too far. So it's quite typical that you get a little bit more of a dip down. So it could get worse before it gets better. But I expect this to break. And I expect it to break to the upside. And that has a target of 145. That's why those alerts are there. Mm-hmm. And if we do that, that's a very, very good development on potentially in time triggering the larger pattern. Again, I would say you would do that. You would have a pullback and a rest again and dip again. But then people get impatient again, possibly. But the next one to go, I've upped the target, by the way, Versan, I must tell you that. It's not even $16. So as things have got worse and everything else is running, I'm doubling down with a bigger target. So in the event of moving, because now we are expecting this move to 145, we're better at being able to project our price objective. So we see $20 falling if this pattern, this macro pattern triggers $20. So that's awesome. But it's a long way still from happening, and we need the smaller daily to kick first. So let me let you respond to that, because I've been going on for.
This is why we emphasize diversification amongst our audience. But there's going to be a place and time for the demand for XRP that just hasn't been recognized yet, even though the adoption continues and continues to expand. So we'll leave it at that. And I really appreciate your insights on all that. So my next question is about the SWIFT system, which is owned by in my opinion, the deep state based on the research, the Swiss bankers known as Octagon. Most people haven't heard that name. They're always focused on the Rothschilds, but really it's the Octagon. That's like the royalties over there in Eastern Europe. Anyways, they're connected to over 12,000 banks worldwide. They put out a headline the other day on the global CBDC platform. So how can people protect themselves or circumvent such a system like a CBDC that's being forced on them?
I think one of the things, and I mentioned to you, I think we spoke to Jeff Bloom. I'm trying to remember his surname now. Terrible with the names. He's excellent. He wrote the book, The Money of Tomorrow, I think it is. Hold on, Jeff Booth. There we go. Jeff Booth. That was the gent. And one of the things we need to do, and I'm guilty of this. I scream and rage on Twitter at the World Economic Forum and a lot of other people. That just actually empowers them. We're talking about them. We're keeping them in the news. We're helping proliferate their message of their totalitarian intent. We're putting people in fear and almost everything. You get to a point where you know what they want to do and what they're telling you, and it's time to ignore it and to unplug from the system. I mean, just a simple thing. I was forced to use banks to send funds over, and this was the most efficient way. Actually used Wise, and I had to do a currency exchange, and I got quite a decent exchange rate instead of using the commercial banks. But the transfer of the funds was well over $2,000 just because it was a big sum. And of course, if that had been on the XRP ledger and I was sending that amount, I might have paid 20p or 50p. That's just banker extraction. And being raped on currencies are just a great ruse for banker extraction. And as I mentioned, all the taxes, as I've already done, right the way through to death taxes on already taxed income and purchasing taxes, and then inflation as a tax. I gave you, the whole roast. You've got to stop. You've got to stop these hits on you. And people have to understand the attack vector, and you've got to stop participating in their system. So one of the ways you can do that is get a crypto card, have Bitcoin in it. It's slightly more stable than the others, particularly during a bull market, and have less money in your bank and try do more transactions utilizing crypto, getting the cheaper costs and all the other stuff. Try use the exchanges less, have self-custody, etc. Get one of these card providers and pay for things. Ask every time, do you take Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin's the largest, you might need to, help proliferate Bitcoin. Even if you think it's captured, the capture hasn't occurred yet. We know the existing system is 100% captured and the full extraction is on, and we know it's 100% going to fail. So even if you think Bitcoin's got a 10% likelihood of failing and is captured, never mind, use it now, while it's probably less dangerous than what could suddenly happen. And you have, China hack, Russia hack, North Korea hack, whatever scam headline of the day. You don't have any credits in your bank account. We don't have the tapes. It was all destroyed. We will have a UBI and a compensation system in the future, but the IMF is seeing what we can do about this right now. That day comes in some form, a lockdown, a climate, all the different attack vectors. I can't tell you which one it'll be. They've prepared so many. They've got us all guessing. It's almost like, you've got to guess the card they're going to pull out, which joker they're going to pull out. But don't. You don't need to. Just be protected against all of them. So, and that definitely means gold and silver as well. Because as I say, the Bitcoin could fail. No one has yet explained to me how Bitcoin will coexist with a CBDC, that everyone who gets the UBI in the CBDC won't dump that and buy Bitcoin if there's real interoperability between them. Will there be two different monies and the two will be on different rails and they won't talk to each other? And you'll have peasants' money that they can taper, they can stop you from buying too many stakes, and then you'll have Bitcoin super money. Maybe that's a way that Bitcoin survives. So I'm not bought in that Bitcoin has to survive. Sometimes rockets have a stage 1 and it stops you from buying gold and silver. It serves the purpose, and then they kill it. Even if BlackRock's put trillions in it, they kill it. But then they own already all of XRP or something else that is being used. Who knows? Guessing this future, and the people that have been deeply, deeply belief system into there's only one answer and it's only one protocol and it's Bitcoin. That worries me. It's like a mono uni world. There's only one solution, etc., etc. There's clearly going to be lots of different applications for this money. Some of it might be most of it will be weaponized against us. I call it hold your nose investing. You should have held your nose and invested in Apple, Google, all the people scraping your data in the share markets. You'd be incredibly rich if you'd done it, rolled it all into Bitcoin, and I think you'd be even richer still. And these other tokens that are definitely all real world asset tokenization, this is how they're going to steal your stuff. I can tell you that now. But at the same time, because they're driving that agenda, and it's Fink who's driving it, that's why I don't trust him, it's clearly going to go up for a bit first. Will Bitcoin offer something like that? Will they do it? I don't know. But get out of the existing old system, because it's the old house and they've already put the explosives in and it's going to come down. Get out of that. And that's the answer to your question. What do people do? Get out of the old system and get out of debt, get out of the old system, get out of being on the wrong side of a compound interest equation. That's why you get out of debt. And then start saving and putting it into assets that beat the inflation rate, which does imply more volatility, but that's gold, it's Bitcoin, and in time it will be silver, and in time it will be certain alts, and in time even potentially XRP, and in a big way, if what we think happens will happen. But many people will get bored and will leave before that happens. And that's investing. It happens all the time. Lack of patience. If you don't have a level where you accept you're wrong, and ours is 28 cents, we just gave it to you. As long as it stays above there and keeps setting up and doesn't destroy the pattern. If it goes on forever and it loses proportionality, we'll also walk. So there's a time stop on that, but that's still years, or it's certainly blocks of 6 months away. So there's time for all of this still to transpire. And as I say, many people, they chase the news headline. They'll leave one token that isn't moving. They'll chase the one that is. And as it is, they'll wear the elevator down after it's been grinding up. And the one they were in will go. And they'll keep chasing around to the hotspot afterwards. You actually have to understand technicals and have a proper technical system. Or you must have a fundamental view and say, this is where I'm at. Because if you just chase headlines, you're actually going to lose money in a bull market. It's quite feasible, and many people have. And then add leverage to that, you're almost certainly going to lose money. And that's why I say have a process, which is what we offer, or have a fundamental view, and then stand by it. And some diversification, of course, as you mentioned.
Of course, yeah, diversification. This environment, like you said, it's so easy to be consumed by all the negativity. I've personally trained myself to focus more on positive changes and whatever impact we can make. But you do have to train yourself to get out of the dollar, essentially, and just fiat currency in general, because like you said, we're at the end of that cycle. Interestingly, also the BRICS nations, they are trying to circumvent this system, working outside the centric mindset of the dollar. And they're doing this by leveraging the technologies that are in front of us, the blockchain also, through tokenized assets. And they're also trying to introduce a new gold-backed system, which is interesting because Russia and China are actively encouraging all their citizens to buy gold, while the US continues to encourage their citizens to stay in bonds and stocks. The CBDC narrative that just came out, I just find it very interesting that the timing of the release of the news, because it happened during the Baltimore Bridge collapse. And I think they did that so people wouldn't notice.
Oh, yes. A good day to bury bad news is a famous saying that a lady made when there was someone who died and she was fired for the insensitivity of it. But that's how they think in the UK. Yeah, there's not a lot to disagree. I don't know if anyone is truly going to do a gold standard again. I would love to think so. If any form of a gold standard gets brought in, I'll be a very happy man and probably a very wealthy man. And I'm expecting silver will also probably do very well. So even if you don't have any gold, but you've got quite a lot of silver, I think that's going to serve you reasonably well too. And it could even more so in due course. But I'm not sure that they will, because you've got to understand, whilst we must avoid the good and bad, BRICS good, America old, empirical, colonial, aggressive, bully. They are all those things. but there's a lot of corruptness and there's a lot of the same cartel owning the same central banks. So that's almost a theater that's at a certain level for us to play. BRICS versus the West, you know.
Right.
But deep down above that, the same people are running the same game transnationally on all of them, and those nations are cooperating. America's still buying Chinese goods. They need them to make their stuff. And China is still wanting to sell stuff to America, in spite of talk of war and all of this. So business goes on, central banking goes on, and cooperation of a form is still going on whilst accusing each other of spying on each other. So this tends to be, the BRICS versus the West tends to be a pantomime for economic conjecture and chat. But the truth of the matter is the world is already in a form of new world order. All the central banks were put in by the same people. You look at the communist revolution in Korea, China, it all had the footprints of the same people. And of course, Russia, it was very clear, 95% of the ruling class of the Bolsheviks. So, you know, the notion that we've escaped. The main thing for me out of the BRICS versus the West that I would highlight on that and say, don't get too sucked into the pantomime. It's a bit like left versus right in politics. You know, Trump gave Jerusalem to Israel. He gave the Golan Heights, part of Syria, to Israel. You know, he's a Zionist. But everyone's like, oh, Trump. Well, of course we hate Biden. He looks super dodgy, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean you keep pivoting between one and the other. There is no difference in policy in terms of the people they support, really meaningful. So the one thing I will highlight on that is that Russia got its Bolshevik revolution and the people got crushed. And it scarred their psychology. You know, the Russians are known for grim and not smiling because you would get arrested for smiling. People would think you're up to something. And Germany, to a degree, has that also post-traumatic national event culture as well. The West has got its turn to come. If you look at the bulk of the wealth and the size of the population, most of the population is the rest of the world. In fact, you can draw a circle that partially encompasses China, Indonesia, and a little bit of India, and you've actually got in Southeast Asia, you've got 50% of the total population of the world, and you've got this massive landmass of everything else, and it's less than 50%. So if you look at number of population and total wealth, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand as well, they sit with much higher income and a much smaller amount of people. Those are the people with the targets on their back in terms of the World Economic Forum, and they are typically English-speaking, white Anglo-Saxon nations that are getting diversity exported to them quite industrially. And those are the nations I'm concerned about. And those are all the wannabe aspirational nations to live. And I'm here to tell you the trend is down, both for life quality, both for financial, and they will be greatly reduced as states in the aftermath of what we're going to be put through, and potentially even at a population level. Leave while it's still safe to do so. And this is a deeply unpopular message, and virtually no one listening to this will do that. But you stop paying tax. For Americans, I would suggest you give up your passport, get a Turkish one, a Mexican one, whatever the case may be. Others, you don't have to go so far as that, but you want to shake the global taxation. The minute you are a visitor, you get better tax options. We are incredibly efficient, and we're not paying to this beast to near the same level as anyone who is currently banked in the same country, that he works in the same country, that his family's in the same country, that his business is in the same country, or the company he works for, and these businesses bank. You really want to get to five flags where they're all different. The nightmare for the statists is you have a Turkish and Mexican passport, you have Georgian banking personally, you have Panamanian banking corporately, you receive dividends from there in that country. Guess what? You suddenly have options and you pay very low tax. And that's what I will say. Leave your Western stronghold. Not good things are coming. The trend has turned. And with that, the money flows away to the other places, and all those nations you never thought you'd live in actually are going to be turning corners and are becoming more capitalist, and they're often the ex-communist ones. So, Bali might be a nice place for you. I think the Grand South, I think, Argentina, crazy as it might be, South Africa with its crimes, but whatever, other places, Eastern Europe, very strong, not high crime, quite family orientated. These are places you might even go, even Crimea, if you wanted to be the other side for Russia or something like that. And people say, well, it could be a war there. They're blowing up the bridge. Okay. Wherever you go, there's going to be drama coming. But the difference is who's going to win. And the West isn't winning this one. The financial is collapsing. And with the financial goes the military. With your lack of ability to maintain a huge beast that you've created with massive amounts of fuel demands costing computers, if you can't sustain that because no one accepts your debt anymore, no one's putting all the burgers you're eating on, this big fat man on the beach, and everyone's running around selling you goods and feeding you. And they stop saying, put it on my tab. They stop accepting that. They start wanting payment in gold. That's when your whole Ponzi ends. You don't want to be there for the downdraft that goes with that. And people truly need to think about that. And I'm telling you, very few will. It's an unpopular message, but get out of the West. Get out of the West and stop participating in the banking system and reduce your tax, not for you and your selfish reasons. That's a side benefit, by the way, but to stop feeding this beast and to help bring the end to the debt system. And that's where our friend Jeff with the card and Bitcoin is probably right. And I will concede to him on that. Spend Bitcoin for the moment, it's on a ledger, have less fiat in the bank, and have gold and silver.
You said something so important about Trump, and I know a lot of people are looking at him as like a messiah, right? It's important to recognize that true change isn't going to come from government. It's not going to come from military or
Don't
Trump.
vote it. Yeah, no, you're not voting change.
Yeah, there will be a point where humanity has to get off its ass and actually confront this evil directly if they're going to see any real change. But I totally agree with you. People do need to think outside the box because you don't want to be here when all this goes down. So
leave and defund. Leave and defund, and there's nothing you do passively that saves you. Voting is actually a very passive thing. I think you could probably do it from a computer one of these days, or they'll do it for you. Who knows?
No, they'll do it for you, and they'll still ask you.
And your dead granddad. But, it's not changing anything on either of the parties. You're never going to get a different party. It's a binary system that they've captured both sides. You saw what agenda they advanced under the one. It's two different styles. And we know we dislike one style more than another, but don't feel comforted by a personality. There's no character behind it. Principle of sound money. There's nothing that will change in terms of, are they going to pursue principles of sound money? Are they going to stop the war machine? Are they going to do all of these things? No, no, no. This is how everyone lives on the hog. Are they going to fix the debt system? Well, it's unfixable, but would they even continue? Ron Paul ran and ran and ran long after the Republicans had selected Mitt Romney to force his message through. And he was the only person ever that I would have said might have tried to, although I think he would have got JFK'd, made serious difference. And that's what happens to you if you were. But he pushed his message. And that was someone you might have voted for that I would have said, okay, go on, go ahead. But you aren't getting it. You won't get it in America. You're in a steady decline. You need to leave. It's uncomfortable. And you don't, and I've even seen YouTubes of, like Mossad agents saying, if you haven't left by 2030, you'll probably be dead in America. So I'm seeing quite spooky stuff. Now that's fear. Don't get into fear. I'm not here to peddle
but it's
fear,
true.
but I'm just saying there's going to be some, it's going to get the places you used to look down on your new friends and the places you thought were your friend. This is a revolution. It's not evolution. What goes with a system collapse on this scale, never before in history, in case study history, has a Ponzi scheme be so globalized. You had the recession of the 30s. It wasn't near as bad in Europe, and China didn't even know anything about it. I doubt Australians were overly worried about it either, particularly. There wasn't that cross intermediation that we have today. You have never before lived the economic case history that will go with this shell of a house, now that they've stripped all the valuables off the walls, being spontaneously imploded in a controlled demolition. Don't be sitting in one of the rooms. That's my message to you. It's financial, it's social, it's economic. It is going to be everything. thing. It's freedom. It's going to be so many things. You're going to get more freedom in the places that used to be looked down upon for freedom.
Ray Dalio's book, The Changing Order. I read the whole thing. Really good book. I do want to ask you this is my last question, actually. Sure. Before we got on the call privately, we discussed the BIS central bank money flower, where they had certain technologies, digital, that were outside of the central bank purview. Remember, we talked about their money and our money, right? Hence the CBDC, UBI, whatnot, but their money. And this is based on the research, right? It seems that behind the scenes, you have major institutions and central banks, again, exploring the concept of classifying certain digital assets, specifically XRP and XLM, as stablecoins to gold or a basket of commodities. And that is supposed to provide stability to the global market for their money. And in my opinion, this is really their only logical approach for them to protect themselves. And this obviously would be the potential for the backbone of the future of financial infrastructure. My question is about stablecoins. There is no doubt that they are creating their money, and that's in the IMF trust bridges. I'm going to send it to you when we're done here. And they have our money. I want to know what your take is. Do you see them using digital money or reserve system for themselves being backed by gold or a basket of commodities, since it's all going to be tokenized anyways? And of course, considering all the behind the scenes activities of these big institutions buying up the gold, publicly discussing this very quietly, though. It's just we do the research, and they're talking about pegging a new stablecoin, which they haven't found, needs to be scalable, secured, all by the World Gold Council, to gold or a basket of commodities for their money.
So there's a couple of things in what you just said that's worth splitting out. So we spoke about polarization of wealth. You could, in fact, have a two-tier system where you have a ruling class that has their own money, and we get the CBDC, which says one steak a week. You can't have more than one packet of cigarettes, and you've driven too far this week, so you can't top up petrol until next week. We could have that for the serfs, which would be us, potentially, or you could be sufficiently wealthy that there is a bigger money level player field. It's almost like a VIP room in a casino where, real money is played at the table and everyone else is playing nickels and dimes on the one-arm bandits and a crappy little table. You could have that. And then they could say, well, just be wealthier and then you can come and play at the bigger thing, but it's virtually impossible for you to do. So that way it doesn't look like it's victimization, but to cross that boundary becomes impossible after the new system. And they might like sound money. Generally, however, if I were to make a general comment on they've always got by with the money we have. Just by virtue of the fact they're on the other side of the compound interest. They're earning off the bad money, off the interest that they created the bad money out of thin air for. So it's a very good business. They just keep dumping it for physical assets. So they'll own homes, they'll own tangible things that can be used, and they'll ask you to tokenize your home, your vehicle, and then they'll print up more tokens and buy your thing off. And there'll be an embedded rental agreement. As new owner, you'll pay a rental extraction for the use of your old car that now belongs to them, and living in your old home that now belongs to them. And they literally can print up tokens. So the bad money, the worse it is for you, the better it is for the person on the other side, because they're perpetuating that. So they don't really need good money. They just need really bad money that they can be on the other side of. You get the really bad money and they get to extract everything you own because you're on the real bad money side. They get all the privileges of renting to you, devaluing the money, printing more up whenever they want something. So actually, when we talk about good or bad, you have to ask good for who. The current money system is exceedingly good for bankers. They earn millions of dollars, even though they're going down, and they buy gold with it and they get out of it. And we have a unified money system. Gold is a second money system. Everyone could have had it. They'll buy that. They'll also be heads up by the intelligence and the people they are part of elite groups, which assets to buy, which equities to buy. They're exceedingly rich in dollar terms. Doesn't matter that the dollar goes down a little bit. They're making 50, 100, couple of 100% a deal. in their fiat money, just off insider trading and various others. So the notion that we will end up with a good money because eventually, it's like a Star Wars movie, eventually, the Dark Knight gets killed or Darth Vader, etc. I don't think it is. I think it perpetuates because it's very good for them, and they currently hold all the power, have given you bad money. And a CBDC is the ultimate in bad money because you're being sold it for the convenience, but in actual fact, they have all the surveillance. They don't have to ask, I still have cash. I pay for things for cash they don't see. They will now have the data on everything I do. And they can even say, if I paid for something, they can immediately tax the person that received the money as real-time taxation on his money. They've got a whole smorgasbord of new extraction techniques that could be done virtually, robotically, with an AI that doesn't even require them to get out of the lilo that they're lying on in their multitude of, penthouses and specialist homes that they'll buy up with tokens that they've created. So that to me suggests that we don't even have to ever go to good money because it doesn't serve them to give us good money. Or even for us to see someone else having it like them. So I don't think necessarily we get a two-tier system. The more bad the money for us, the better it is for the other half of that, the other side of the seesaw. I think they're out to tokenize and strip everyone of assets.
I agree with you entirely.
That's the end game.
Yeah. Yes.
And so we build wealth and you buy physical things and you try refuse to participate in tokenization, but eventually you may have a situation on your property. You'll get a fine if you don't submit your council taxes on your land or your property through the token to show it's paid up to date. You'll be able to go with a book and a piece of paper only so long, and then they'll just squeeze you out. And then you will be in the token system, and then eventually they'll take it. So I'm almost about buying time. If we do better than buying time before we're in a total technological, I set such a low bar, and I know people hate hearing this, but the fact that I just think buying time. But eventually, think about us with our gold, Versan. You're sitting with gold bricks, you've got some Bitcoin, you made good money and self-actualized. I'm lucky to have done reasonably well. I can have a few million of stuff. And then what? They'll say, any gold holders out there, we just want to, we want to just ask questions. Let's take an inventory of the nation's gold. And I refuse, or do I agree? If I refuse, they say, if you refuse to notify us, that's a criminal offense with X amount of years and a major fine. So now I stand the chance of everyone on YouTube who heard me say gold is a good investment, dopping me in. They'll pay rewards to people to say, hey, do you know of any gold owners who haven't told us what they own? So if I refuse, I'll be a victim of people. There's lots of collaborators, low life people that just for a small favor and a donut will take some experimental medicine, like an injectable. So imagine how many people that will happily dop you in to get a few privileges under the new slave master. Everyone cuddles up to the slave master, even if he's evil, and doesn't support the resistance. So I will have to say I have gold, and then I'll declare it. And then they'll say, okay, thanks for the information. And they might later say, can we send an inspector? We'd like to make sure that you've declared it all. And then you'll have someone come around your house, or a bot. It could be a dog with a scanner, spot the dog, or one of the Terminators by then. Who knows how far we'll go. Eventually they'll say, well, you've had it for a while and we've revalued it up and you made a massive capital gain and everyone else in the world is suffering and their UBI isn't getting their money. And we need more help from these elite privileged people like you that got to be in an asset that went up, given that it's us that revalued it, because it probably won't trade the whole way up. It'll go up, then everything will fail, counterparty risk, and then they'll just revalue it at what they need it. So you'll get this big stipend bonus, and they'll say, well, you need to pay, which will require you then to sell a large portion of it because you'll have some extortionate communist type tax. And then they'll say it, and then they'll say, yes, and actually we don't like the fact that you were a big gold holder, actually. You're not like the other citizens. You're very bourgeois, like the Bolsheviks said. It seems you want to be better than everybody else instead of equitable and equal. And then you start to become unpopular, and then they tell everybody there's this class of people, like they did with the people that didn't want the jibby jab in the shoulder. Remember how evil we were and all of that. So then you start victimizing the middle classes. And this is how it goes. Eventually, they can create, with a big enough room of fools that all fail to protect themselves, happily clamoring for you as a crab to be dragged back down into the bottom of the bucket, and cuddling up to their master so that they could get a free donut and comply. And then you have people that control everything. And you have to sell it, you have to declare it, and someone buys your token, he can take ward of all your metals. And if they control the proliferation of those tokens, there won't be any one limited supply CBDC. I can guarantee you that. Inflation is their friend. Theft is their friend. And remember, inflation, bad for you, very good for billionaires and bankers. They're on the other side of the deal. What you have is you have a machine that steals little bits from every single person all the time on a compounded basis, year in, year out. And you're on the recipient side of that. I'd love to sit down at home and have a little bot that steals, true inflation personally, 12, 15%, 12 and 15% of everybody else's wealth while I'm proliferating the token and sending it all to my pet projects and loaning some of it back and buying assets and preferential rates and doing all of this. Inflation makes the billionaire class richer and the banking class ever richer. Wars make the billionaire class and the banking class ever richer, and it impoverishes with debt and inflation the rest. That is the game. That is the understanding. It's as simple as that of the financial system. And how you stop that, and the fact that they're going to pivot to a new theme with everything being digital and convenience, with the digital and the convenience becomes the surveillance and the intrusive and the unavoidable tax net, because everything you have will be in there, including your ID, who you are. You'll be self-identified. Think loves about tokenization is that we cross all boundaries, transnational. Okay, on the surface, everyone thinks that's okay. And we know who everyone is, and everyone has a personal ID. Oh, okay. Well, I might not want you to know that I just received 50 Bitcoin for a payment for something. And now everyone goes, oh, he's doing well. Who's that? Da, 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 da. Oh, I wonder if he's paid his tax on that. What was the thing? Please explain this. Please explain that. If you've moved money recently, and I've just bought real estate in the banking system, it's a freaking nightmare. And you can say how many times you want. I'm buying property. But why this? What this? Why no, no, no. Da, 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 da. We need this. Hold on. More documents to fill. Send us an offer to purchase. You've got to, with your own money that belongs to you, they are treating it as if it's already theirs. You have to prove you're not a criminal every time you move anything of any minor significance. And imagine, you think that's getting better with a digital system?
No, that's the
no
control
cash in
mechanism.
a digital system.
Right.
Oh boy, you're going to sit in such a tiny little tight box, and you're going to have so much explaining to do. In Australia, they're talking about 500 Aussie dollars. Let me tell you, the Aussie dollar is a lot weaker than the euro and the dollar. Those being reportable events, and people only items below that. Literally, you're going to be petty cash. The only thing you won't have to jump and do squats for and perform and tricks and documents and online digital bot questionnaires, etc., that you won't have to do is if you're spending petty cash to buy some chewing gum at a cafe. Everything else is going to get beyond ridiculous, and it will slow finance down, but they will automate it. Don't worry. We'll go do your tax for you. Your bot will do the tax for you, what you owe. Isn't it convenient? That was on that. Describe the product that you bought.
That's the sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to give you some convenience, and we're going to take all your freedom. And people
100%.
will just go through it naturally. And this is history. You know, I always say this to my friends and audience is that history will continue to repeat itself because people don't understand their history.
That's right.
I
and
need
the
to
people
quote
that do, who are running the game, will keep suppressing the real history.
Of course.
That's the other part.
And that's
you
the
don't
part of
get
the
to
game,
read the
right?
real history unless you try real hard, and it's getting harder and harder, let me tell you. And there's so much reframing. We've already seen there's the jokes with Black Elon and Black Putin, but you're seeing it on, Britain and Irish. The Irish were actually an African nation. They've already trying to change their history. In other words, you have no land that you lived in as a white European. They were legacy, all of this. This is history being rewritten in front of your face, and they assert it with such confidence through such big mouthpieces that you almost start to Mandela Mandela effect start to think it's possibly true because, repeated a lot. I wasn't there. Maybe they had blue eyes, but they were generally Africans. I mean, you can perpetuate any mischief. So, I mean, the state of our times is totalitarianism through a technological Bolshevism. That's where we're going. You've got to buy more time and quality of life. I'm relieved almost that it's my birthday tomorrow and I'm turning 56.
Oh,
and
wow,
maybe
man.
if I'm lucky, I'll get 30 more years out of it, because the direction of this is not good. The difference is, I don't want to tell people what they want to hear. I'd rather you be as prepared as possible and understand the severity of the attack vector. I'm not going to sit and pray and kneel as the Vikings come over the hill outside of my village. I'm going to usher everybody in behind the doors, get the pans and pots and their bows and arrows, and let's put up a bit of a fight. There's something coming. Buy yourself some time. You might be able to see them off and they'll come back. They'll go away for a while and come back with more people later, and you could have run away somewhere else. We're on the run at the moment. We're on the run from this transnational. That's why I broke up that BRICS versus the West. Doesn't matter where you go, but it'll be more amicable and better on the arbitrage side as a prison asylum. I'd almost rather prefer, if it wasn't for the cold, be a Russian. If I could speak the language and be a Russian right now, the trend they will have from where they are going up is far more business friendly. They've arrested 400 people for social media incitements. Britain has arrested 10 times more for hate speech and various other things. Who's George Orwell on the George Orwell factor? If Russia is 1 at 400, then Britain is at 10 on the 10-meter scale for arresting people for hate speech and all of that. So actually, the signs are already there. And I'm not saying I would choose Russia, but I'm saying Eastern Europe, borderline areas, Georgia, Indonesia, great demographics. You'll go with great wealth. Things are cheap there, quality of life. Australians will tell you about Bali till the cows come home. Those are places you can look at. I mean, I know South Africa. So when people talk about crime, I know where it is and how it's located. There's still risks, obviously, from it, but the quality of life and the cost of living and what I get. But, go Bali if my option doesn't suit you. I was born there. I understand it. Go, Chile, but don't be in the big Western old Commonwealth nations and the English language Anglo-Saxon nations, because you've got it coming to you. They want your money. And when you look at that pie diagram, it's a small amount of population with huge numbers, and the rest of the world is like this. All the other billions, small charts. It's obvious who they're coming to shave. And you look at the media, you look at Trudeau. That's a pantomime clown. It's perverse to the extent. It's almost an Onion article every day. So go while you still can. It doesn't get easier the longer you leave it. Avoid the rush.
Agreed.
Leave now. That's what they told me in university, by the way.
Well, no, yeah.
You're all going to fail your first year. Avoid the rush, leave now. That was actuarial science, by the way, which was pretty tough course. So leave while you can. That's where I leave it. And enjoy your life. I'm having a blast, by the way.
Right.
Inside of that realm, you've got to recognize what you can affect and what you can't. There's a psyop going down. I refuse to be psyoped. I'm going to laugh at them. I'm going to mock them. And I'm going to keep being a slippery little eel that's slipping into every little crack, that they'll take the easy killings and the dumb sheep that are standing there steering them like deer in the headlights.
You're a survivor. That's why we love having you on. Unfortunately, I do have another call in like 10 minutes.
Yes.
I have to prepare. So, Francis, you and I can go in circles. I think next time we need to make a 2-hour conversation. I think it would be better if you're up for that, or not 2 hour, maybe an hour and a half, if that works.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on. And I also want to say happy birthday. And everyone could follow Francis Hunt at The Market Sniper. Please be sure to check him out. The link will be in the description below. Do you have any last words? My call starts.
Don't be bummed out by the
minutes.
psyop. From what I'm saying, don't let it get you down. And it might initially sound negative. You were born for these times because you can handle it. You just got to build your strength, build your health, and build your wealth, and know all the attack vectors. And then you'll have a great existence. The world changes. Things do change. And eventually, they will change for the positive too. But until that event and day, we're preparing for the worst eventualities. And if we're wrong, great, there's only upside going. And that's the safest way. That's what risk-aware people do. They prepare for the downside. And that's what we focus on at themarketsniper.com and on the YouTube channel. If you want to have a little look, you can book a call from the website. Just watch some YouTubes first if you want to see if you like what we're about. But thanks for having me on. And XRP, guys, there's a daily setup coming.
Yeah, Francis, we'll talk very soon, okay? I'll send you those documents here shortly after my next call.
All the best. Bye-bye for now.
Take care.